Hey, friend, Dr. Charlie Hornis here. I'm going to say a phrase, and I want you to pay close attention to it without thinking. Just see what happens in your body and in your thoughts immediately when I say it. Are you ready? You need to stop people pleasing. I know, right? Ugh. I don't know about your reaction, but every time I hear something like that about people pleasing, I get like crawly skin or whatever you call it. And this is after I've mastered this horrible habit. I don't do it anymore. I don't care. What's your response? I'd love to know. Why don't you drop them in the comments and maybe we could see if other people feel the same way. You know, I think there's a lot of us out there, and maybe people don't want to admit that they have issues around people pleasing, but I really think there's a lot of people that do. A lot of people that I talk to, so many of my clients, my students, we're all struggling with it on some level. I think it's frustrating because when we do it, often we don't seem to have any control. And then it causes these sort of after effects, these ruminations, these late night guilt parties, self-doubt, and even regret for not having the ability to stop in the moment. And so many of these issues, they can really mess with our cognitive functioning. I'll admit though, one of my favorite topics is talking about overcoming people pleasing. So much so that I'm launching a course next month, May 20th. So I'm super excited about that. This is just something I could talk all day about. The thing about people pleasing is that it's one of those bizarre states of mind that you don't actually know that you're in until you're in it. And until you're deep in it, you're kind of already far gone, right? It's not much you can do. It's kind of sneaky. It's insidious. And here's why, because we can almost always identify people pleasing after the fact. It's in the moment that we get so tripped up. You are not alone. Did you know that the majority of the people pleasing behavior that we humans exhibit is really just a combination of our primitive brain that is left over and hadn't evolved, like our prefrontal cortex, with a set of neurotransmitters that are called the feel-good hormones? Yeah, there's 4 of them. And more often than not, it's your brain that's the culprit for why you get so frustrated at your people-pleasing behavior. Yeah, sure, you play a part, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't work on behavior, learn different techniques. There's a lot of stuff that can solve this. I struggled with this for a long time until I understood what it was. And so do my students. I see it all the time. It's not necessary. It's really not necessary. Often, the kind of behavior we're dealing with when we talk about people pleasing, it's stuff that we take immediately to heart. As soon as we can't stop the behavior, we start beating ourselves up like there's something wrong with us. I'm here to tell you today, of course, we play a part in it. It's ultimately about your brain. There's probably something that you need to address in your life and your relationships if you had a significant reaction to hearing what I said about stopping people pleasing. But again, here's the good news. The bigger picture of this behavior that so many humans struggle with, it's not your fault. And there's nothing wrong with you if you're actually struggling. There's so much more to the story. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. It's actually behavior that was well-intended back when humans lived in these communal tribes. It's only ever trying to save you. I know that's hard to believe because especially people pleasing, I hate that. And when I learned that the whole point of people pleasing is actually part of my survival mechanism, and that my brain is trying to save me, I was a little resentful. Okay, let's be honest. But just a little caveat here. I'm going to stay in my lane as best I can. I'm not a scientist, but my doctoral research was in the intersection between neuroscience and cutting edge life coaching strategies and methodology about difficult behavior that ultimately causes significant damage, primarily women, often women in the workplace. So much of it doesn't have anything to do with us. It's just human nature, a lot of it. It's amazing. I love watching my students' minds blown and the massive behavioral change that happens immediately when they can put the bat down and stop beating themselves up. It's not you necessarily. Part of it is you, like it was me. Once you understand what's going on, then you can take some agency back from your lizard brain who loves to hijack it from you all the time. It's life-changing when you really understand the neurology behind a lot of what we do. It's because of our brains. Now, I'm going to talk more about this in this episode, but I want you to get ready for some significant, massive change. Okay. So if you're multitasking right now, I need you to come back to me because I've got some really interesting information. So are you ready? Let's go.
I'm Dr. Charlie Hornis, highly anxious people pleaser turned master certified professional life coach, owner of my own successful coaching studio. I've learned the hard way through a lot of mistakes and lessons learned that if you are not living the life that you deserve, you can feel terrible. That used to be me. It felt like only yesterday that I believed difficult people and situations had more control over my own emotions and happiness than I did. I struggled so much with my own confidence, self-doubt, letting too much stuff get to me, lost sleep, ruminating over what other people thought, said, and did, and all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, that I never focused on living the life that I deserved. But no more. Learning the art of managing my brain and practicing thought work changed my life almost instantly. I went from feeling terrible to living the life full of self-confidence and the freedom from people-pleasing and letting stuff get to me I always wanted, but never knew how to get. Learning to manage my brain was so life-changing for me that I got certified so that I could teach these incredible evidence-based practices to you. I earned my doctorate degree studying the science behind why the stuff that gets to you makes you feel so terrible and the actionable steps you need to change your life for good. Fast forward to today, I'm living the incredible life that I deserve, a life I never imagined I could have, and I've never felt better. My small but powerful coaching studio is changing lives every day and bringing me more happiness than I've ever thought possible, doing the work I'm so passionate about, helping you feel better about you. I've created this coaching studio to give you doable, simple, step-by-step strategies to help break down what's behind all of these barriers to your happiness to help you do the same. So, if you're sick and tired of feeling terrible, if you are ready to go all in, try something new, and start living the life that you deserve, then, my friend, you are in the right place. Are you ready for massive change? Let's go.
So let's start out with these 4 feel-good hormones. So we're talking about dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin. These are neurotransmitters, also called stress hormones, and they're released in our brain, and then they cascade through our bodies. And then there's lovely enzymes that come along and chomp them up when they're done. Dopamine is the one I want to focus on today, because it's the most relevant to people pleasing. It's known as the feel-good hormone itself. It's also known as a seeking hormone. It is associated with seeking pleasurable sensations, like when we discuss the motivational triad of our brain. Our brain wants to do 3 things. It wants to seek pleasure, as in safety. It wants to avoid pain, as in don't be dead. And it wants to conserve as much energy as possible because at any moment it's ready to run away from the bear that's hiding behind your car or whatever. But our brain doesn't understand that there's not a bear walking down the sidewalk, right? We've addressed bears before. They're my favorite. Our brains want to find safety. It's a neurotransmitter that is crucial to the brain's reward system. And it learns over time by trial and error what it believes that's important. It's subjective, okay? What the brain believes is rewarding and what is not rewarding. Now, whether it actually is or not for the long haul of your health and safety, that's another conversation, but we'll get into that in a minute. So it's trying to help you, really. And it's the reason that our brains learn to seek out good behavior and avoid bad. There's also an alerting component to it. That is what that whole seeking safety thing is all about with the triad. The good provides reward, seemingly. Everything your brain is seeking is trying to save your life. So identifying patterns of good provides reward, which is what it's seeking, such as, for example, finding food or water. This tells our brain that these things are good, that we need more of them. So let's remember to get food and water. That feels good. And often the dopamine rush is released in the anticipation of a reward. It's not getting the reward itself. Have you ever been excited about something and then when you get it, it's really not that exciting? You are more excited in the anticipation of whatever it was, right? Well, that's what we're talking about here. Dopamine is released in the anticipation. Your brain has predicted, like a numbers game, like a spreadsheet. It has made a call that something good is on the way. It's 99% sure that it's going to happen. And so it releases that burst of feel-good hormones so that you seek that thing out and you get it. And the bigger the reward, the bigger the payoff, the better you feel. They say that there are significant spikes of activity with the neurons. And I'm not going to get into all that neuron stuff because that's not my field. But I'm going to have some guests come on to talk about that because we need to know about as much of this as possible in terms that we can understand. These particular neurons spike pretty significantly when there is the predictability of a reward. There's also significant activity when something bad happens or an expectation of something bad happening. When everyone's just kind of chill and nothing's going on, there's no activity. Makes sense. Neutral stuff doesn't, there's no dopamine happening. There has to be this anticipation or this runaway feeling, like this predictability of good or bad. That's what we're talking about. The thing, though, is that we don't always have to like what dopamine is motivating us to do. And that's where control gets in the way. There's a lot of behaviors and habits that we do that we seemingly think that makes us feel better, but ultimately it doesn't. My coach talks about the late night run to get some kind of snack, sweet, whatever it is that you like, Doritos or cake. I don't know. I could do both. When I lived in New York City, we had 24-hour bodegas. So you could just walk down the street to the corner and get whatever you want. That's not quite the same here back home in Texas. It's a lot of work, but dopamine will make you get up and get out of the house in your slippers and robe and go get that thing that you want. It can. It doesn't mean that it's good. It also reinforces behavior and habits that it subjectively thinks is good or bad. It has a lot to do with the activation of our ability to evaluate situations as the evolved creatures that we are. This is what makes us different from the animal kingdom. Our brains, they seek answers and solutions to problems. Answers and solutions are a reward in themselves. So dopamine's only goal is to seek an anticipated reward and avoid the bear. But it can turn any behavior into a wanted behavior if there has been reinforcement over time to want to achieve whatever that behavior's result is, even if we cognitively know it's not good for us. For example, overeating, over drinking, social media, checking out with TV. There's so many things, from really difficult and destructive behaviors to small things. If you're on your phone in the evening and you're ignoring your loved ones, your kid, your partner, your dog, that's not helpful. But you're getting a reward for doing that. Those little bursts of dopamine when you play that game on your phone or watch that movie or whatever. The way that we think and behave, because of neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, which means our brains can change. We can technically rewire our brains by how we think, which is why I teach mind management and thought work. And there's this reinforcement over gradual time, like trial and error, that teaches our brains when we get that dopamine burst and when we don't. What that says to us is, this is food and water. It's good. Let's do more of that. We're going to wire our brain into that pathway. Or this is bad, and we're going to rewire our brains away from that. That's how this is supposed to work. However, we live in the craziest time right now. We are entirely surrounded by false pleasure everywhere, from food to video games to phones to, I don't know, just take your pick. For me, it's books. I can get lost in some books about magic, fantasy books. I love fantasy books, the paranormal romance and fae and knights and queens, and so was in the human world and discovered that her dad was a fairy king and blah, blah, blah. That's my jam. I can get lost in that forever. My family's like, hey, stop with the fairy books. All right. So whatever. Anyway, that's my thing. We all have a thing. Out there in this world, there is so much that confuses our survival mechanism, because this starts to mess up our cognitive functioning. Our brain doesn't know what's good and what's bad, because we seem really happy when we're eating all this terrible food for us, all this processed food, and, all the stuff that we love often. It's not good for us. Instant gratification of all kinds of things. We're just literally surrounded by it. It confuses our brain into knowing what direction to go. If I'm so happy doing this thing that I know is not good for me, but the neurons start activating in my brain, when we're doing this stuff over and over again, we are literally reinforcing actual neuropathways in our brains to tell ourselves this is good because it feels good. We're getting dopamine bursts in our brains, the feel-good hormone. And so our survival mechanism is saying, oh yeah, that's good. Let's go in that direction. That's a good one. But it's not. So this is what is confusing our survival mechanism, because we have a brain that's trying to save us by doing everything it shouldn't. It's like, oh, you like the donut? Oh, that feels good. Yeah. Donut. That's a good thing. Donut will save us. Yeah. Exercise. No. Bad. And again, it's the brain doesn't want to exert energy. It is only looking for pleasure, which equals safety, right? Donut, pleasure, not safety. But I'm not really sure our brain understands that, because it wants us to go in that direction because we've reinforced that neuropathway. And We've also reinforced avoiding the gym because we feel yucky when we think about that. It's supposed to work to save us. It's supposed to protect us. And it has turned entirely upside down. What this does is causes what's called a reward prediction error in our brain. So we're constantly having errors, user errors, typically. The error is such as whether something is indeed an anticipated reward that's actually good or it's something that's not. This is subjective. We teach our brains through this rewiring of our neuropathways by reinforcing behavior because it feels good, because bursts of dopamine going off like fireworks in our brains. And we do not reinforce behavior that often is good for us that we don't want to do because our brains don't want to exert energy. And the gym sounds like energy. There could be a tiger chasing you at any moment and it needs to be able to run. None of this has anything to do with society today. All these things that are supposed to save us, keep us safe, keep us healthy, they're working against us. One of the most important key factors when we're talking about stuff like people pleasing is that there needs to be a surprise factor. Our brains anticipate and they predict reward, just like hopefully they can anticipate and predict danger. That's why we have rewired these neuropathways so that our brains remember, oh, take that path and there's the food and water that you need to live. And if we take this path, that's the saber-toothed tiger who's going to eat you. We've rewired our brains to know, let's go that direction, not this direction. The thing your brain wants the most is predictability. So, for example, let's say you walk into your boss's office and maybe your boss is not easiest person to work with, but you have been working really hard. You just finished a project and you are so proud of yourself. You know you did a fantastic job because you're educated and competent and amazing at what you do. And you can assess whether or not you've done an amazing job. And you go in and you are anticipating a pat on the back because a lot of how we understand if we're doing a good job is by the responses that we get from others around us. Now, that doesn't mean we go seeking that in some unhealthy way. It's like getting your report card. Somebody's graded your paper and they've said, hey, that's an A, or, oh, you need to work on this. We need a level of feedback that is in the sort of praise category to know we've done a good job. And again, that is going in the direction of safety, keeping our job, family, salary, all of that is important. But you walk into your boss's office anticipating, your brain is predicting that you are going to get that reassurance that you've done a great job, everything's great. And you are met with criticism or no response at all. Your brain doesn't like that because it absolutely anticipated a reward and it didn't get it. And in that moment, when you're anticipating this thing and you don't get it, that is when that reward prediction error occurs. User error, like your brain stops functioning for a hot minute and it doesn't know what to do. Therefore, because it's a seeking hormone, it starts to seek solution. It starts to need to fix. It starts to look around and say, what is going on? Because I wasn't able to predict this negative outcome that has happened. And so your brain now, the alarm starts going off because something has happened out of left field, like you didn't get that affirmation that you really thought you were going to get. Your brain becomes disoriented for a moment. Some of us maybe longer, shorter. We're all different, but the science is that your brain becomes disoriented when you do not get what your brain is predicting. And so it sets off this dopamine alarm that there's danger. Again, your boss not, giving you the affirmation and praise you deserve that you've worked really hard for is not a saber-toothed tiger. However, your brain doesn't know the difference. All your brain knows is that you were supposed to get this big, awesome dopamine burst and you didn't. Therefore, we're going to get disoriented. So immediately in that moment, your brain starts to seek. It wants to fix the task. It wants to solve the problem. And often it just wants to stop feeling yucky. So it starts doing stuff to try to fix it, right? And this lack of predictability for something negative happening, it's what causes our brain to go in this tizzy for a moment when we don't know what's going on. We freeze, we flight, we can't think in the moment. And that's when we immediately do stuff like try to make the person who is withholding the anticipated reward happy in the moment, rather than step back and think that through, because your brain is literally disoriented because it did not get what it was supposed to by somebody it should have gotten it from. And that's why we begin to people please, because dopamine is a seeking hormone, right? Like you were going to go down this path and then all of a sudden out of the bush jumps the saber-toothed tiger. And, oh, that's not good. I didn't get my nice, calm walk. I almost got eaten. So in that moment, there's this alarm that goes off and this alert system kicks in when the anticipated result doesn't happen. So what does it do? It starts seeking pleasure, which equates to safety immediately. That's what it does. Whatever it can grab onto that seems safe, that would provide itself pleasure, would be what saves you. And in this instance, making the person who's not pleased with you happy would be the fastest way to assure that you are safe. Because A, this person won't throw you out of the tribe because then you'll be fending for yourself. But B, it wants to have the reward of pleasing the person to get what it expected it deserved. So there's just all this cool stuff happening. And what our brain perceives as important in this day and age is really difficult because we live at a time that's strange. And I've addressed this before. There's a lot of passive aggressiveness. There's hostile work environments. There's people always displeased with us, no matter what we do, no matter how great we perform. And then there's the stuff that I talk about that's camouflaged, like misogynistic behavior and thought processes and sexism, because people can't come straight out who have that belief system and say exactly what they think. And so whatever it is that they're not allowed to say out loud because they're afraid they're going to get canceled, but they're still mad and they still think it. So now we're dealing with camouflaged negative behavior and our brain cannot tell the difference. And it doesn't understand the difference between what is safe and what is dangerous. When something bizarre happens out of left field, that surprises us. Again, that really crucial key factor is a surprise element because that's what causes this moment of disorientation. When, for example, you're blindsided by your boss, you were expecting neurologically. Now, we're not doing this stuff consciously. This is all happening in nanoseconds between the firings of these synaptic neurons, and we don't know what's happening. But your brain was expecting this huge blast of dopamine. It expected it. It predicted it like the best stockbroker predicting a really great day. Our brains, when they're caught off guard, they seek to understand. Our brains evaluate what's causing this neuroexcitement. It needs to solve the problem. It needs everything to calm down so we can go back to being, safe and not dead and not exerting energy. So it really doesn't appreciate that. Let's solve the problem. This is why teenagers in horror movies always walk into the chainsaw shed rather than run away, because some neuroscientists wrote this that knew, our brain is going to hear those clanking chainsaws and now we're scared and it's dark and we got to go find out what it is or go down, the basement stairs that are pitch black. It doesn't make any sense. This is what's happening. And scientists are saying that there's a similar excitement in our brains, even if we begin to seek negative experiences because the excitement, because of the neuroactivity. And scientists, they're still not quite sure what our brains use as criteria to identify what a reward is. The seeking hormone potentially could begin to seek out the negative events that have excited the neurons that have caused this significant activity that is very similar to when we are anticipating a big reward. When you're blindsided by your boss and you were expecting, your brain was expecting this huge blast of dopamine, and then you don't get that reward because of this lack of predictability, and it creates this neuro excitement it wasn't expecting. Suddenly, your brain has to go into the chainsaw shed and investigate the noise to solve the problem, to fix the issue. Otherwise, we don't feel safe. We have to go and please the person that is withholding that anticipated reward, because that's the fastest way to feel better, is to get this person's approval. It's not you. It's not that there's something the matter. It's not that you can't get it right. It's not that you're defective. It's that your brain doesn't appreciate being blindsided. Your brain is like this accountant that does not want you to touch his pencils. Like everything's in its place. Everything that's supposed to happen happens. And when anything goes awry, it just messes up the whole system. And your brain has no idea what's going on. And it has to reset. So in the moment of disorientation, we have to get our feet back on the ground. The fastest way to do that is to find a way to feel safe. Well, the person withholding the affirmation, the approval, the yes, you get to stay in the tribe one more day because I'm in charge and I decide who stays and goes and who is going to be saber-toothed tiger fodder. You get another day. And when you don't, or your brain feels like you do not feel safe. And that has to be rectified instantly. It's not that you're a people pleaser. Now, there are some that are more than others. Sure, that's just part of our genetics and our DNA and the way we were raised and our story and our experiences. Like there's all these things that make us very different from one another. However, there's nothing wrong with you. This is your brain and how it works. The anticipated reward is withheld. Your neurons are excited and they are coding at this peak response. And it's the same response that they've detected when they've gotten a big reward. It's this really big energy and activity. And that turns on the alert system and says, oh, we got to pay attention. That's how it determines what's important. And when it determines something that's important, it has to seek, it has to evaluate, it has to investigate, it has to solve the problem or the task, it has to please whomever is not pleased with us. That's all it is. Once I figured this out, I was like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? There's no way. Come on. Really? But it's absolutely true. It's absolutely based in science. There's this really cool phrase that I've heard my whole life, especially lately when I've, the last several years when I've been doing trainings and learning about thought work and mind management and just all of these tools that have absolutely changed my life and now are starting to I'm seeing it like wildfire. We are changing lives left and right when you really understand what's going on. Who did I say the other day? I made a joke that it's like taking the red pill in the Matrix. Now, I know I'm dating myself, but and you feel sorry for people that don't know, or they're buying into all this awful stuff, either about how they feel bad about themselves or how they let other people behave because they think it's their fault. Like, this is not your fault. None of this is your fault. There's nothing wrong with you. Now, once you learn this, you're going to have to, put some skin in the game and make some changes and feel your feelings and identify, why do you want to run out in the middle of the night and have that cake? Why does that make you feel safe? Do you just like the dopamine blast? There's this saying that I've heard for years. And what it says is neurons that fired together, wired together. But you know what I never hear? I never hear the second half of that quote. The second half is neurons that fire together, wired together, as long as they get a burst of dopamine. For example, your neuron A over here decides to activate neuron B, and that activation produces what would be identified by your brain as some kind of reward. There's this burst of dopamine, and that burst is necessary. It reinforces the pathway. It remembers it so you can do it again. So it literally wires that pathway together so that you will do that again. The flip side of this is that there is a lot that can be unwired or rewired in a different way. That's a lot of the work that I do. I rewire people's brains based on learning to manage your brain and understanding thought work and the science and methodology behind that, most of it based in neuroscience. When we understand thought work, we understand that we can rewire our brains and we can change our behavior and we can understand things entirely different than we did before. And we can change our lives. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to change anything about yourself. The great thing about this work, my friends, is you get to be the amazing, incredible, awesome person that you already are. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to stop people pleasing. You don't have to learn how to be better at conflict. You don't have to learn to say the right things in the right moment. You don't have to ever let stuff bother you again. You don't have to let people get under your skin. You don't have to let stuff get to you ever. Because once you understand the science behind why you feel what you feel and why your brain is doing this, and often it's just trying to save you horribly, it changes everything. It changes your whole life. My son asked me the other day, does anything offend you? And I said, no, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I know why my brain responds the way it responds. I know why your brain responds the way it responds. I know why you say the thing. I know why I feel the thing. And I have an entire incredible methodology that I have learned over the years that has changed my life. I don't care anymore. And I care very deeply, right? I care so much, but I don't care if you have something ugly to say. I don't care. Doesn't matter because I understand my brain and I can manage it. So that's what I teach. And that's what my coaches teach. I don't know anything better. In days, I was a different human doing this work. The whole point of talking about the amazing, almost magic of mind management and thought work is that we can rewire our brains to stop some of this stuff that has entirely confused our survival instincts because we've totally disoriented them. If our brain is not capable of this predictability factor, it doesn't function well. So basically, when you don't have predictability, such as someone blindsiding you with, some awful comment or somebody saying something out of left field that's really ugly that you don't feel you deserved, that disorients your brain. And that causes your brain to have impaired cognitive functioning, even in that little moment. The problem with all of this, the problem with not seeing people-pleasing behavior for what it is that you will continue to do it. And you will continue to wire those pathways in directions you don't want them to go. Because if you've convinced yourself that you can feel better by that boss who didn't give you the affirmation that you earned, by the way, most likely, I imagine, I know I did. If you continue to allow your brain to tell you that you will feel better if dude who did not give you the affirmation that you earned finally gives you the affirmation that you will be safe because you get a blast of dopamine, you are causing really bad neural pathways for yourself. And you are training your brain that is the right direction to go, that is where food and water is. And my friend, that is where this saber-toothed tiger is waiting for you. Do not go that direction. And let me let you in on another secret. If you have worked your tail off, if you have done something that's awesome, that you know is awesome. Sure, there's typos or whatever. Nothing's perfect. But if you have done amazing work that you are convinced and you feel great about, and then you go in and your brain is predicting this parade of awesome affirmation to help you understand that you're doing a good job and you're successful, and you don't get it, that person, they're never going to give it to you. If they don't give it to you in that moment, unless they have a good excuse or they're busy or they're, on the phone or something's on fire. If you don't get the affirmation that you've earned, you are not going to get it. Not from that person and not from people like them who, for whatever reason, their brain tells them to behave in such a manner, probably trying to save them as well, which once you really start to understand this, you start to live in this place of incredible empathy. You're like, wow, what is your brain telling you that you can't take 5 minutes to give me the affirmation I deserve that I earned? But whatever, it's your brain. Good luck. They're never going to give this to you. It's not happening. You will spend the rest of your life chasing dopamine blasts to feel better in the moment because your brain's disoriented. And you didn't know that, but now you do. And you don't have to do that anymore. You can say, oh, well, all right, must have a casserole on your mind or whatever for dinner tonight. I don't know, but here's your report. Bye. See you later. Have a great day. Because you don't have to chase that. You don't go in the chainsaw shed. Don't evaluate the problem. Who cares? I mean, how many of us scream at the TV when we watch a movie like that? Don't go in there. What are you doing? Everybody does it. Everybody I know does it. They're like, get in the car and drive away. Get in the car and drive away. What are you doing? What are you doing, you stupid teenager? What are you doing? No. Ah! Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying to you. Don't go down the dark stairwell into the basement of never-ending dopamine chasing. That's all you're doing. Stop it. Don't do it. You see you're doing it. Oh, it feels yucky. Yeah, of course it does. You're disoriented. And often when the dopamine alert system kicks in and it runs through our amygdala, it cascades all of these stress hormones into our bodies. And those are things that were supposed to happen when we were in real life danger. Our life was in jeopardy. That's when those responses are supposed to happen. But we're so messed up now, we don't know when it's a bear and when it's our boss being a jerk about, I don't know, thinking about casseroles instead of giving us our ticker tape parade. Well, I deserve ticker tape parades. I don't know about you, but... So don't go down the dark stairwell. You don't need to know what's down there. It doesn't matter. Get in the car and drive away. That is safety. That is joy. Because trying to make somebody happy that is never going to give you that approval. I mean, they've already proved it. They've already shown you their cards. Now you're just feel good hormone chasing. You have a problem. We're going to intervene right now. Stop it. It doesn't have to be a thing because now you understand. So let's wrap it up. Why do we people please? We people please because our brains are 1950s accountants in suspenders and bow ties that don't want you to touch their stuff. Oh, that's like my husband. No, Michael's not. He's not stuffy, but he definitely loves an Excel spreadsheet. Our brains are creatures of habit. Our brains need to predict what is happening as far in advance as possible. And the moment they can't, they freak out. It's like a tizzy, it's like as a toddler having a tantrum because it doesn't get what it expected. What 4-year-old does this sound like? It sounds like my kids when they were 4. That's exactly how our brains behave. It doesn't get what it expected, what it wanted, its little feel-good blast of whatever. It throws a tantrum. And so now you're disoriented because that's how the brain works. It's like stuck in between the good and the bad. It doesn't understand neutral. It doesn't understand gray. It needs to now solve the problem because that's what the seeking thing does. It seeks safety. Safety is pleasure. Pleasure is a reward. Reward are answers. Answers are, why doesn't my boss love me? I'm going to freak out. Now I'm going to go home and ruminate all night about it and all the things I did terribly. And the truth is that you just didn't get a blast of dopamine. And now your brain hates you for a hot minute. It'll get over it. I promise you. So that's why we people please. And the problem with this, the biggest problem when you rewire your neural pathways to start this behavior, that's somehow a good thing. You won't stop doing it. Your brain thinks that's food and water, and it's not. Think about it. It's not. That's why you're doing it. And that's why it's so annoying, because it's not good for you. It is not good for you. Your brain just doesn't know that. You have to start living in the prefrontal cortex. That is our evolved brain. That is where our judgment is, not in the primitive brain. The primitive brain, as much as it's trying to solve and help, it's not at all. No, it's practically Michael Myers. No. I'm Jamie Lee Curtis running around the woods like, So yeah, let's not do that. That is the human brain. That is why we people please. That is a thing that we need to stop. Now, I know your question is, well, how do I stop? Yeah, you can. You can. I'm actually launching a new digital course in May, and that's exactly what the topic of this course is. It is a step-by-step how to conquer these behaviors that cause us so much anxiety and stress we don't need to have. We don't need to have this. There is no reason to lose sleep, precious sleep that you love, ruminating over whether or not you please somebody that probably never going to be pleased. And you only did it because you were chasing dopamine. Okay. Well, yeah. So now you know what it is, but how? That's my course. I'm going to be launching that. It is going to be available Monday, May 20th at midnight through Sunday night at 11:59. So for that week, I am offering this course. The first 48 hours of launch week, I will be offering 20% off. You can see a link below if you want to sign up and grab that. The course is $397. It will be modules, so pretty significant amount of fantastic information. It'll also come with all of the supplemental PDFs and works. And if you're interested in learning the how to do this, then I suggest you grab this course when it launches Monday, May 20th. There's a link below if you want more information. And if you want to grab that code, then sign up for that. The other thing is that I have a new private coaching program that I'm offering. There's not a lot of spots because there's only one of me, but I have a 3-month commitment, and you can find that on my website as well if you were interested in one-on-one private coaching live with me once a week or so. So that's another opportunity to learn how to do some of this stuff. I hope this was helpful. There's so much about our behavior that is driven simply by the neurons that fire in our brains. Almost everything we do that makes us crazy feeling, it's like, that's how, I don't take that lightly. I've shared when I was in the workplace and I was not getting responses from people that made any sense to my brain, and just normal stuff that I was using my thinking brain for, that I knew I should have gotten better responses or not been treated, talked to, so whatever. I wasted a lot of time worrying and ruminating and having stress and anxiety and convincing myself that there was things wrong with me, and there was nothing wrong with me, just like there's nothing wrong with you. It's just about information. And again, your brain likes predictability. So once your brain has the information, it doesn't have to get disoriented anymore. Like, that's the funniest part, is you're like, oh, brain, here's why you're doing what you're doing. And then your brain is like, oh, well, that explains why I was getting disoriented, because I wasn't able to, predict what was happening because I didn't understand. But now you're telling me that it's my fault that I did this, and now I can stop because now I can predict it. How are we walking around in this world? Seriously, I just can't. It's too much. I'm going to laugh the rest of my life. It's not because I have the funniest person in the world as a husband, which I do, but it's now that I'm learning all this stuff. Again, I took the red pill because I see it for what it is now, and I want everybody to have this view this perspective because I've never been happier in my entire life. And I've never cared so little about letting stuff get to me. It doesn't have to because I've taken over entire agency of my brain. My brain's not in charge. I'm in charge. And I'm not playing with that nonsense anymore. I'm not doing it. I refuse. I want you to have this information. I want your life to change like mine did. That's why I'm here. I want to get this out to as many people as possible because there's no reason for you to be dealing with preventable suffering. There is no reason for you to be miserable. There is no reason for you not to be living the life that you deserve. That was just a preview of part 1 of the class. The second module is about understanding our survival brain and step-by-step how to basically get it under control. We're dealing with the amygdala there, and it's not hard to understand, but it can be hard to implement, which is what I learned is that I needed a coach that was trained in this to walk me through it step by step. My third module, why we take things so personally. That's going to be the topic. That's a preview of the course that's coming up and jump on the list below. And the whole class is $397. I just want to get this stuff out to everybody. So I'm really excited to have you guys get this information in your hands. If I can help, let me know. Talk to you soon and have an amazing week.